Hello guys, this is Lisa, an occupational therapist specialized in Padawan therapy, master degree in autism spectrum disorder. And today I am going to do a react. We are going to watch a Jubilee video about can you tell if someone has autism? I really like the topic. Not because my master degree it's in autism, but also because the way how how the video it's made, and I really like Jubilee content. So I was like thinking for a very long time ago to do it, and I decided to go for it. As an occupational therapist, I always introduce myself. No, as an occupational therapist, I work with children with special needs, different ages, different disabilities, not just autism. Obviously, I work with kids and teenagers with ADHD, mental health disorders, neurological disorders, etc. But definitely, mainly, or not mainly, but the most of the kids that we see, it will be kids with ADHD and autism and sensory issues. So the title called my attention, how you could tell if someone has autism or not. Being a therapist, I find it interesting. So let's watch it together. And let's see how it goes. Okay.
I told them straight up, in order for me to be my most optimal self, I'll need some of these accommodations. I was the only non-minor there who had his mom with him during that time, and I'm proud to admit that. I'm a mama's boy.
Okay, starts like that. All right.
Hi, I'm Gen, and I explore issues through both sides. And I'll be moderating this middle ground episode of Autistic and Neurotypical. And the first prompt is, I find the word disabled offensive.
Okay.
Can the agreeers please step forward?
From what I'm understanding is that we are going to have a group of people, neurotypical, and a group of people with autism. Yes, in the spectrum. I think so. Let's see. I think you should go back there. Okay.
Well, I guess I'll start off first. So being on the spectrum, the autism spectrum myself, and being someone who masks my autism pretty well, I have a hard time accepting the fact that technically, yes, I am disabled, because throughout my entire life, I've had to deal with things like sensory overload, dealing with high emotions at times and stuff like that. But I also was raised to be a go-getter and to, if I put my mind to anything, I can accomplish my goals. And I have accomplished stuff. I'm a writer. I've written about being on the spectrum for Insider, The Doe, and places like that. And I don't let my disability stop me. So it's like, we live in this world where having a disability is a bad thing, and most people kind of operate that way and view disabled people in a negative light. And so for me, whenever someone calls me disabled, it's definitely a trigger for me, to be honest.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with exactly what you're saying. That was kind of the reason I came up as well. I feel that as a root, it's not an offensive word, but the stigma that our society has made it today has created it to be an offensive word.
My son is nonverbal. He's never said a word, never had anything. Use communication with his language. What I find the problem with disabled that I've always had an issue with is it looks at my son in a way where he's supposed to be fitting into everyone else's world. Even movies that are made about autism that are supposed to be like these movies that make everybody love autism, usually at the end of the movie they do something in everyone else's world that makes them special. They catch a touchdown, they go to prom. My son's not going to catch a touchdown. My son's not going to go to prom. He doesn't care about those things. And sometimes you can just be who you are, and you don't have to be labeled, well, you don't do these things, so you're disabled.
Can the disagreeers please step forward?
It's going to be interesting to hear the ones who disagree with this topic. So from what I understood, the first topic is I find the word disabled offensive. Definitely, this is a nice way to actually see both sides, the one who is actually under the autism spectrum disorder and actually the neurotypical. Obviously, the neurotypical here, I don't know the first lady if she's having someone in relation with autism, because the father point of view, I understand. And it happens to me as well. We had a couple of movies going on about autism and even series and so on. And I always find it a little bit difficult to the reality, because in autism, certain characters that we see in movies, in series, and in social media not always represent the whole world of autism. Autism being a spectrum, every child, every adult is different. So definitely make a movie about it or whatever. It's a positive thing, and I'm happy that more and more we are watching more content about mental health, and we are bringing awareness. But it's a little bit difficult that you can picture someone with autism, because every child, every adult with autism will have a different type, or will develop differently, from the childhood till the adulthood. So yeah, it's a little bit complex topic. But let's see what the other says. I think this is the very, personal. No, definitely people who are not under the spectrum or not under any disorder will have difficulties to understand if it's offensive or not. Because it's not something that you have to carry out with you every time that you are going somewhere, or if you're traveling, or if you have the disability card or whatever, there is like those big words labeling you all the time, no? When actually if you are neurotypical, you don't have that. You don't have to take care of that, no? So let's continue watching. But looks for now super interesting.
I never read too deeply into the word disabled. It's just a descriptor of me. I'm disabled. No one's really used disabled as an insult to me, at least not in any way that I've been able to pick up on it. However, people have used the R word to me, and that is what is offensive to me. Disabled is just a descriptor. At the same time, though, I feel like this is a real test for the gray area here, because I still somehow agree with what every single one of you just said, even though I disagree with the prompt. But everybody has their own relationship with words and terminology, and I think that that's what's so beautiful about the autism community.
I find myself agreeing with what James is saying, where, his son probably shouldn't have to conform to the ideas that the world is setting in place. Like, maybe he's perfectly happy being nonverbal, and he shouldn't be expected to talk. But at the same time, if we try and say, disabilities don't exist and that everyone has to fit in this box, right, and we get rid of the term altogether, then that's kind of maybe forcing people like James's son to conform to the world.
Just to piggyback off of that, say, James, have you told your son about this episode, and has your son ever communicated any degree of advocacy to you at all?
I talk to him about everything. People always tell me when they find out he's nonverbal, they're like, you should talk to him. I'm like, I talk to him more than I talk to anybody else on earth. Like, it's constant. There's things he doesn't understand, like fundamental things that he doesn't understand. He doesn't understand that I'm going to do this. He doesn't understand what autism is. He doesn't understand things like that. But I tell him, I'm like, we're going to talk about you. We're going to have, all the great things about you. When I relate to my son, what I try to do is I try to put myself in his shoes. So I write a blog about him. I try to do autism appreciation, I call it, where I talk about the positives of autism and how he's a great kid, not despite autism, but in many ways because of autism.
That makes me very happy to hear. I'd love to read your blog.
Thank you, okay.
Jubilee viewers, you should read his blog.
Hype man, I'm a new hype man, thank you.
So back to
That's
the prompt.
nice.
Just like what you have said, I was one of the few people that faced the R word, especially in high school. I haven't been called disabled for any reason to be offensive for me anyways, but I do see like how it can be debatable and questionable, because it can come off as like you're trying to say this person can't do something just because they can't think accordingly, or maybe cannot walk accordingly, or can't concentrate accordingly.
Do you identify or view yourself as disabled?
Yes, but I don't personally find it offensive for me, because I feel like there's just uglier words, but I do respect where everyone else is coming from, though.
What do you think of that word disabled? Does it bother you?
Disabled, for me, the kind of autism I have is a communication disorder. Like, for example, when I was a little girl, I walked around in circles talking to myself. I wanted to join the conversation, but I didn't know how, and my brain wouldn't do what I was telling it to do. And I've had 20 years of speech therapy, 15 years of occupational therapy, to be able to talk like everyone else to get where I am today.
So you think it's okay to use the word disability because it helps people understand how hard you've worked to be in the conversation?
Yes, it does. And I'm even in the therapy right now.
That's true. And I would agree with Abby on that. I would say that because this autism word and spectrum now has successful people and writers who are neurodivergent, and people who have had 20 years of speech therapy.
And I'm one of them.
And you are, and rock star over here.
That's very cute.
But
like she's.
it's confusing. So I like the word disability because when we're in public and Abby has a stim or arms are flailing, you know.
Yeah, and some people.
Yes, this is just, I'm going to read it. Stimming, a self-stimulatory behavior that is marked by a repetitive action or movement of the body. So in autism, stimming, it's a very, I will say it's a high demand because the nerve system, it's capturing so many different sensory situations and so many activities and so much information that sometimes in order for a kid with autism to regulate himself or herself, we will be doing movements, a repetitive movement, or we were going to do what is called stimming, basically. And I like what the mom is saying, but she still has the need, to go a little bit around to clarify certain things. Is that it's that you have it's that you have, for example, that need of doing so many years of occupational therapy and speech therapy. So it's incredible that sometimes this is what I'm saying. Like when I have parents who are coming for therapy, and they are they are thinking like, okay, I just need to do a couple of sessions in order to work on this particular difficulty. And you're like, okay, let me see how can I explain this. In any area of disability, not just autism or not, there is no, I don't believe in like 5 sessions in order for you to, target this or that difficulty. What you can do is you can improve the difficulty, but you need to have, I will say, quite a repetitive behaviors toward therapy. You have to take it as okay, this is my workout time, this is my therapy time, but it's not just therapy for 1 month or 2 months. It's an ongoing rehabilitation program, I will say, like that. Let's put it that way. But it's so interesting. I don't work with adults this age. And for me, they are high functional, so that's very interesting, the way how they're expressing themselves and the way how they are targeting this topic. It's actually really interesting. I work mostly with kids and, like I said, teenagers, and maybe, I will say maybe up to 20 years old. Yes, we had a couple of clients, but it's interesting to see how they perceive when they were little, for example, the difficulties not to engage in conversation and stuff. That happens a lot. The communication disorder that she was mentioning, it's basically what was called before Asperger's syndrome. So you have the autism spectrum disorder. Inside of autism spectrum disorders, you will have different levels. And then you have the Asperger's syndrome, no? And now, since a couple of years, we don't anymore work on Asperger's syndrome, but we will be working on social communication disorder. And this is what is still a part of autism, but it's a different type, no? So, that's basically how it's going to work. Let's continue.
On the spectrum tend to rock back and forth and flop their hands. And
that's a stem.
Oh, why you gotta call me that out? I was doing that just now.
No, literally, I've been holding my hands like this.
I do that too.
Good thing, though.
I even do this, or but I don't rock back and forth.
Right, but that's not your stem, but other people do like that. So, but whatever that thing is, I just feel like if you understand that autism can be different, can be a disability, because I don't have to stem. I can STEM. This is a STEM too.
And everybody
but it's not
stems.
imperative for me to do that to be in this conversation right now.
I do have a question though, because the R word kind of came up amongst few of you guys. Is there any nuance with that, in that being not offensive or offensive?
No. Just straight up, no. Because the thing is, we've come such a long way in terms of like, well, I don't know if a long way in terms of understanding autism. I think that's why we're all here. But
Yeah.
but just more like we've gone past that word. And I remember I used to work at a coffee shop, and there was this guy who would never call people that word, but he just would say like, oh, that's the R word, like that's that, like whatever. He was kind of like one of those people that was kind of like, well, it's just a word, and it's just a word. And I'm like, well, there are several other English words to use. So it's just like, I don't really see like the medical field has gotten past it. We should get past it.
The year is not 1940,
Right.
and at this point in today's modern language, it is really an insult. Especially going to a public high school, I hear that a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have
Just before we jump to the other one, I really like to use the word of atypical. You know, when they are defining themselves with, so people with autism, and then you have neurotypical, and I think there is nothing wrong if, for example, we call someone atypical or typical. In fact, I like those two terminologies because the fact that you are atypical is because you have something extra, but it's not meaning directly that something bad. In fact, the fact that you have so many writers and you have, for example, Jubilee doing such an amazing documentals, and we can watch stuff now online and to bring more awareness about autism, that's great. But this is why I said, like, when we are talking about neurotypical, that's fine. And if we say that someone is atypical, have a typical development, it's something negative. I think it's way more, smooth than obviously using the R word, which it's not that much acceptable, or disabled, no? But I do think that this is something very personal. It depends how you take it, and it's difficult for neurotypical to judge this if it's offensive or not offensive, in my opinion.
Trouble making friends.
I have trouble making friends. An interesting topic, yeah. Especially because they are adults, no? So
I get emotional thinking about this.
Oops.
I still am struggling, especially now. It just feels like everyone is, I'd never had any friends until third grade. I only talked about Pokemon with him, and that was it. And he was probably likely also on the spectrum, and I was so severely bullied at my public elementary school. Girls tended to be nicer to me as opposed to boys.
I see eye to eye.
Yeah, I have a lot of trauma that I'm working through regarding bullying, and that way I find it harder to talk to men even today for that reason. I'm lonely. I'm so lonely. I channel all of it into my music. I channel every aspect of my loneliness and trying to understand other people and trying to connect with other people in my music and my songwriting. It is my coping mechanism, and I just try and keep myself busy to cope with the fact that I really, really struggle to make friends.
I mean, I think he has an amazing way of expressing himself, so definitely that's very nice to hear. And this is a topic that definitely it's very sad, and it happens a lot. In fact, I will say as a therapist, one of the things that I struggle the most, it's to work with parents, to prepare them. I don't know how I can put this in a nice way, to prepare them that bullying can happen. It's quite realistic, and it happens, even though we don't want to think about it, and we find it like maybe not nice and whatever, because it is not nice for sure. But it happens, and a lot. And children with autism, they struggle a lot to have to have friends, and to have kids around, and to play, and to be invited to the parties, and so on. Obviously, everyone is different, but I'm talking that the majority, that's what is the reality. Actually, he is describing extremely well the reality of loneliness, and the feeling lonely, and not be able not to have maybe that experience with friendship like the others will do. So yes, it's something that even if in therapy we try to target a lot and we work a lot. I'm talking from my side as a therapist, obviously. It's still a difficulty, yeah.
When I was a little girl, life was very, very hard. I didn't have any friends. I wanted to join the conversation, but I couldn't because my brain wouldn't do what I was telling it to do. And in high school, I sat alone at lunch, and didn't really have any friends until I didn't start making friends till I was like 17 or 18.
Same here.
Somewhere around
Same
there.
Here.
And
Truly.
because that's why I've always wanted to be an adult, because I knew I'd have more language, it'll be easy for me to communicate, and life in general would have been easier.
I actually can relate with Aiden to an extent. I had a difficult time making friends because, well, at the time when I was younger, of course, I didn't know I had autism, but I was also a little bit different. I was those autistic kids who kind of was a social butterfly at the time, so believe it or not, aside from how I appear, I was such an extrovert. I was being seen in middle school as kind of like a class clown. And then by like high school, the first high school I went to, which was a really bad school, I was put the gay stigma because of my voice, because all the guys there, their voices are more like low like this. but at the time I was like, more high like this. But it was hard. And by the other high school, which I spent the rest of my high school years, I made a little bitty friends, but people who actually did not just disregard me and did not see me as like a walking joke or some potential lost cause, because a lot of them was weirdly enough afraid of me of what I can do. So,
well, I would like to chime in case it were to. Okay, never mind.
In a sec.
Yeah. Well, now I don't remember. Well, no, I do. I have friends. I do have friends, but I only have friends one at a time. I have never in my life ever truly been a part of a friend group. And I have some of the most beautiful friendships ever, and they're so quality because it's just me and that one friend. But man, I just wish I could be a part of a group. I was out in public recently. I saw 4 artsy-looking people that were about my age, and they were all talking and having a blast, and I was just looking at them just like, what am I?
I think what is very important, especially when the child is growing up, and we highly suggest, from not just being a therapist, but I will say, like, even if I'm not a therapist, I would highly suggest to point out what are the, I will say, the strength of your kid. So if you're a parent or educator or just a person, who is watching this video and you are interested in this, or someone, no? with autism or who is struggling with the same area or whatever, I think the best is that independently if you're a kid or not, if you have a child, with autism or not, or if you're an adult with autism or not, I think the best thing, or maybe the beginning, is to start with listing down your strength, and making sure that you can push your child to develop that strength. So for example, maybe your kid is great at piano lessons or singing, or I don't know, any type of sport or whatever. So then it's going to be a little bit easier for him or for her to connect in a group that share the same interests, and maybe, connect with someone else and maybe a group of friends, and start building a little bit that social skills. Because what is happening, and many times it happens, that we will have kids, till 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, and they will be very much close to the house, the parents, siblings, if some of them have, and cousins, family related, that's it, and maybe some neighbors, but not even. So many times we have kids who are growing up up to 10 years old, 12 years old, just surrounded by this super mega protected circle, and it's fine. But the reality is that when they will grow up and they see their friends laughing in groups, like he was saying, or they are going for extracurriculum activities and they are joining, I don't know, sports or stuff or drama, they are feeling that they are left, and this happens a lot. I do have kids who are in the same functionality of autism, and they like, for example, gaming, and they like particular topics, and they find friends, but they will be finding friends in this sort of areas, no? So, for example, I like to play games, and I will find a friend who also shares the same passion for Minecraft, or Roblox. But that's okay, that's fine. It doesn't matter. The idea is to identify what we like, share maybe those interests with others, and see if we can push our kids maybe to join a social club or maybe a social group or whatever, The same for the adult. It doesn't matter how old are you, or, like, the most important is that sometimes we focus so much in the negative part, like, okay, I have difficulties paying attention, I have sensory needs, I have this, I have that, that we obviously, all of this is going to bring us even more far from connecting with people, meeting new people, etc., etc. So this is like a little piece of advice.
Just
from my
kicks
end.
in.
Yeah, when am I going to have that? That's what I wanted to add. We can move on now. Mm-hmm.
It's funny because I disagreed. I was the only one on my side who disagreed, but I also can pinpoint each of you in something that you said, because I definitely can relate. I think I've gotten good at developing surface level friendships. As an adult, I still don't really know how to find that line between like opening myself up, but also not expecting the same in return from the other person, because sometimes they don't know how to give the same in return. Mm-hmm. So it's just, it's not just necessarily like that the other person has bad intentions, it's just the way we communicate and the way that we think can be different and just not always work. Mm-hmm. And I think that's still something I'm struggling with.
Even here, like hearing you guys over there when I was disagreeing, the level of openness that you're willing to share these stories is like, it's what we always say we want. Like as a parent, you go, I want to have a kid who's honest and who doesn't lie and who doesn't do these things. And then I'm like, he has autism, like, oh, I'm like, no, but that's exactly what we all want, right? We want that thing, and they don't get it. And I've struggled with my son. My son is not. I mean, social was always, in my opinion, like out the window for him. He's not very, he doesn't want to socialize, hang out with people. But what ended up happening was my girlfriend's son is minimally verbal, and he's known him since he was like 3 years old. And whenever we would get together, he would always like try to play with my son, and Lucas was just kind of like, whatever. And we noticed about a year ago, they were in the pool, and like Lucas started like following him around the pool, trying to like tag him. I was like, oh my God, is this happening? And we've noticed slowly that he's been doing that too. I see that. I worried about him having, people be his friend. I worry about people taking advantage of him. I worry about neurotypical people sometimes having the worst intentions. These people who don't have disabilities are the ones who sometimes do some of the cruelest and worst things. So it's always been, I'm not so worried about him and friends, I'm worried about the other people around him to be his friends sometimes.
In fact, that is a good point. I also will say that most of the time when I talk with the parents, and I always say, like, I don't think the difficulty is actually of your kid, because they are very naive, and most of them very naive, very honest, about what they like, what they dislike, their opinion, their topics, their questions. But what I am worried, and I try to bring awareness to the parents about, it's about actually the other people. Because unfortunately we live in a cruel world, and socially not everybody is so kind and so nice, and maybe not everyone is surrounded by this awareness or share this topic or interest, which is fine. But yes, when we talk about adults or kids, atypically developing, we have to take care also of society, of social rules, educate our kids from the beginning, what is acceptable, what is not acceptable, etc., etc.
A little more.
As far as developing friendships, it's ironic because I'm insanely social. Like, I traveled Europe by myself with a backpack, and I'm still friendly with people I met for a week on a train in Venice. When Abby was, as she told you, a little kid, she almost didn't see them.
It's like I didn't see them.
It was like other kids, she just walked right past them. She was so in her own world, which is her kind of autism.
And can I explain the whole Ariel story?
You can, sure.
And when I was a little kid, when I first saw...
It's cute that because she's an adult and she's still asking the permission of her mom, she can talk and she can explain the story, you know?
The movie, Walt Disney's The Little Mermaid, I really understood Ariel, and she inspired me. Ariel was my inspiration because it's just like how where she wanted to be with the humans and I wanted to be with the neurotypical people, just like that. And when Ariel became human, she couldn't talk. That's how I felt.
Okay.
That's exactly the kind of autism I have too, Abby.
Really?
Yeah, except I never verbalized it like you did.
I have looked down on someone for being autistic.
Okay.
I'll sit next to you, why not? Yeah, I mean, I have. I mean, I'm not proud of it because I was diagnosed around 3 or 4 years old, and my parents got me intervention very early. Because of that, I was able to get coping skills and learn how to mask and learn how to
socialize and
essentially be like everyone else. I'm at a weird point. Like the last couple of years, I've really have come to realize that like the mask I've had to put on has really been kind of like cemented onto my face. And like my autistic self is like something I'm still trying to chip away at. Like when I was younger, like I was never the one to bully anyone, but like I would take note of like other kids who I felt like were autistic, like whether they stimmed noticeably or not. And I kind of subconsciously would just sort of be like, well, I can mask. Why can't you keep it together? For lack of a better way of saying it. And I'm certainly not proud of it. And it's something that I definitely am working towards correcting about myself. But for me to say that I haven't done that would be a lie, which is why I'm sitting here.
Which is
I never
slightly
really
understandable.
spoke or never looked down on those on the spectrum. And this was obviously before I found out I was autistic because I was diagnosed at 2. And then I later found out by like, I think middle school year, but I never looked down on them because at the end of the day, for me anyways, they're human, and let alone, aside from me being autistic, I'm also can be looked down because I'm, as you all see, I'm alternative and stuff, so there's just no point, for me anyways, to look down on someone that's on a spectrum or anyone who's with special needs or has any other disabilities that they may not have asked for anyways.
From the information I've gathered, the 4 of us who are on the spectrum were all diagnosed very early. I would be very, very curious to know somebody who was diagnosed much later's perspective on that, especially since for so many of these later diagnosed people, they don't realize they're on the spectrum immediately.
Because when we're talking about this age, you know, if we're talking about the age of 2, 3, 4 years old, that's what's called early intervention, which is fantastic if you can be at that age and actually get your diagnosis, you know, and then you grow up in this environment, not just full of therapies, but, you know, everybody's understanding everyone, so there is no awkwardness, I will say. Or you are at least I think you as a kid, you're not treated awkwardly. But I do meet a lot of parents that they figure out that their kid has autism, and then at the later age, you know, stage as well, age or stage, they figure out that themselves have autism, and that's like very frequent. The same with adults with ADHD. It happens a lot. So it will be interesting to have the same conversation actually with adults who, you know, from 30 years old, who actually didn't, I don't know, I will have to look if there is another video of Jubilee, so definitely we can do another react. To know what is their opinion. Because obviously their childhood and their growing up will I think make more sense. If they look back, they will say, okay, that's the reason why I suffer for this, for that. Because I'm pretty sure that every adult, if around 30, 35 years old, you're diagnosed with autism, I'm pretty sure some of your childhood situations could be explained. Or at least the way how you felt in society, or your relationships, or, or the way of communication, or, your topics, your habits, things like that, no?
I've sat at parties with Asperger kids, which I know you're not supposed to say that word, but the intelligence in an Asperger person is such a gift. And I learned all about astronomy from this one kid in 2 hours, and his mother was saying, "Oh, leave the nice lady alone." And I was like, "No, please let him stay with me. This is so cool." So that's because I'm coming from that place of looking at neurodiversity, autism, Asperger's in a different way, because I've been around it for 25 years.
I'm a teacher's aide for the beginning theater class at my school, and there are quite a few kids in the class with autism. Sometimes they'll say something that's a little crazy.
So now it makes sense why she's here, because she's not only, like I'm saying, when you're talking about things like that, definitely you need to have a relationship close to autism, okay? Because neurotypical or just typical adults, they will not put interest on this, okay? That's unfortunately, this is how it is, which is, I will say unfortunately, but at the same time, it's normal. I will not put interest maybe on certain topics that I don't have relation close to, but if I meet a friend and suddenly he's telling me about, I don't know, Legos and puzzles and stuff, maybe I actually will start saying, listen, this is a really cool topic, let me investigate more about it, no? So now it explains why she's here, also because she's a teacher, and obviously she has close relation with kids with autism.
But there's something that, like, some other kid might take offense to it, but I just know, like, sometimes there's no filter, like, it's okay, and I'm just like, okay, like, let's talk about why that might not work, why that might not be a thing to say, or if it's something that's like, whatever, we can just move past it. So yeah, definitely, like, no judgment at all. Like, I understand that sometimes there's, like, less of a filter or something else like that.
So both of my parents are special education preschool teachers. They've bounced around throughout the grade levels. But when I was in preschool, I went to the same campus that they did, and I was in a class where myself and then later my sister were the only two neurotypical kids.
Okay.
Everyone else there either had autism, Asperger's, or some sort of physical disability. It's not something where I would look down on a person for having that just because I've been around it so long.
Okay.
But I know that, like we were talking about, public high schools and kids in general can be really cruel. And it's not uncommon to see autism or the R word being thrown around as an insult.
And it happens on social media all the time, especially TikTok.
Unfortunately.
TikTok is like a war ground, a battleground for like the rudest, meanest, most judgmental people. And sadly, a percentage of them say they are on the spectrum.
Prior to my son being diagnosed, I remember one of the things that worried me was that as a parent, when you first have a baby, autism is almost treated like something you have to avoid. Like it's almost like, be careful, don't feed him this, don't do this, don't tell him that. And then when he had autism, I was like, okay, now what? And they're all like, and I'm like, but what does it mean? Nobody could tell me what it meant. Nobody told me what it looked like. I mean, he smiles, he hugs me. They're like, some people hug. Is he gonna talk? Maybe. I'm like, you're not gonna tell me anything. What am I gonna find out about him? So I was preconditioned to be fearful of this thing that once I saw how it affected our lives personally, it wasn't bad. You know, it was one of those things where, like, I was expecting the worst possible situation. I think a lot of times people have opinions on something that they don't know anything about.
What I actually just realized is when
I'm going just to stop here because I really would like to maybe just point out this, that it's true that happens very often. You will have a lot of people and a lot of adults commenting and, you know, giving their advices and suggestions before the diagnosis. And the worst thing, it's even after. Even when you get the diagnosis, you will still hear people saying, I don't think he really has autism, you know, or it doesn't look like he's autistic. Or she, or whatever, you know, because look, I don't know, in his face or on her face, it's like, I never understood that point of any adult, to be honest, independently. Hopefully, like I said, if it's just a neurotypical person saying it, because if it's a professional, I will be really, really scared, you know, honestly speaking, because I never understood that point, you know, like independently, what is your opinion? Keep it for yourself. My honest suggestion, if you consider that he is or not and their spectrum, if he has a diagnosis, probably he passed and the parents passed through a process to get a diagnosis. Another thing is that maybe, I know you could be extra worried or whatever, but there are different ways of saying it and also showing it. And it happens a lot. It happens a lot what the father was just saying, like, they will be giving you a lot of advices before the diagnosis. Because, especially if we're talking about pediatricians, I'm sorry if there is any pediatrician watching this, but that's the reality with doctors. Many times it's like, don't worry, every child develops differently. Don't worry, not everyone has to walk at the age of, 1 year and 2 months. It's okay if your child starts to walk at 2. No, it's not okay. No, it's not okay. You should be checking these things, no? Before, because this is how we can actually prevent certain things. And then once you get the diagnosis, it's like, okay, so good luck. And that's also not okay. You should be prepared professionally to be able to not tell you to the parents what they have to do, but definitely be there to support them. And if you don't know how to support them, then you can move on to another professional. That's why we have so many. We are a lot in this world, working with children with autism and working with in this sector, I will say, and that happens a lot. People putting their nose and giving advices, and then like, okay, once you got the diagnosis, even people disappearing from your life, and you're like, okay. You feel like you've been judged before, and now it's like, okay, you deal it, because at the end, it's true. It's not going to be you are the one giving the advices and whatever, but it's not going to be you dealing with the kid 24/7 or with the adult, So it's something that definitely we have to be extremely careful.
The key defining moments was actually like remembering. I was having a hard time socializing in middle school. I remember one commercial from Autism Speaks. It was like the Black Plague was among us, and just talking about an autism. It's like autism was basically treated like this curse, and it's gonna creep on you when you're least expecting it, and everything. And I remember that commercial vividly. And it's just like, what kind of message are you sending out to the whole world who won't take the time to educate themselves on things? And
I'm so happy that Autism Speaks has really stepped up their game in recent years since then.
It's harder for autistic people to get a job.
Join our Middle Ground Patreon to watch this exclusive prompt.
Accommodations should be made for autistic people to be included in society.
Accommodations should be made for autistic people to be included in society.
Something that I've written about quite a bit, and why I've felt like I've had to write about my autistic experiences a lot as an adult, is because there are no services really for adults. And that's a problem, at least like besides like speech therapies and stuff like that. I mean, in terms of like, for me, learning how to be social, it was something I had to learn on my own. And like, I know that other autistic people, unfortunately, will struggle with substance abuse and alcoholism and stuff like that, because putting on the mask can be so exhausting. You just kind of like don't know what else to do. Taking THC for me has helped really kind of help me learn about my autism, actually, which sounds like such a stoner thing. I don't consider myself a stoner, but just, I don't think those are concrete things, like, and I do think that the medical industry, in part by updating their understanding and updating terminology, I do think that there needs to be more.
What are some specific accommodations you would like to see?
I don't know if I can think of specific accommodations, but I think just like this overall misunderstanding of autism, really, as cliche as it is, I mean, it really just affects
I think there is a big misunderstanding, but because like they were saying before, I think it is the way how we were making, how the society or everything, all the programs, etc., were making this, picture of autistic child. Child with autism is this kid who is, completely nonverbal, making weird sounds, and I don't know, other things, when actually autism is not that only, and it's not exactly that like that. Every child is different. you have a lot of children with mental disorders who will be, having similar behaviors, etc. So, like I said, I think it's not just about autism. I think in general, disability, all this world needs to get a little bit of an update. Needs to do other things a little bit slightly better. But I think we are we are moving forward. I can see it from the moment that I graduated. And I started working as an occupational therapist, and I started seeing kids straight away because I always specialize myself in pediatrics. I can see a huge difference, and we are talking about over 10 years. So I think, I don't know what age they are, but they seems like between 25 and 35-ish years old. So I think it's something that it's improving, it's getting better, but we have to continue working. But thanks to people who are speaking up and programs like that and other types of awareness, and that's a little bit the idea of me streaming and going in live in my YouTube channel, and working with my clinic and etc. It's to actually bring this awareness. It's not just purely for me to have, whatever social presence, but it's actually to bring this social presence to the awareness about not just autism, but in general, not just about occupational therapy, about the work that we do with kids and how it's important to actually work with kids from the early ages, and also work on the diagnosis from the early ages. And I think social groups and activities and other things are improving as well. I think you have now, parents have a little bit more of options, whether before, let's say, I will say maybe 5-6 years ago, I will not see so many possibilities for parents to do activities and maybe have one-to-one swimming lessons or, football or whatever. Now I think you have more autism-friendly activities, cinema and other things. So I think more adaptable, I think it also depends on which country you're living. But yeah, I think it's slightly better. But anyway, let's see what they say more.
For a single autistic person.
Well, the problem is that autism manifests itself in so many unique ways,
right.
And it can differ so much from person to person,
right.
That, the moment that you're out of...
Oh. Give me 1 second.
With the public school system, right? They stop providing an aid, right? And
Exactly.
Yeah, navigating life yourself like that is probably really difficult.
It's difficult for a typical person coming out of high school in this day and age with the pressures and social media in your face. I see it with her brother. It is so hard, I think, for a lot of people, let alone someone. And then the parents of the person who just turned 18 trying to help their kid build a life.
Yeah, with no support.
No support. It takes a lot of fight.
Oh,
I'm
okay,
a fighter.
so I think they're talking about
I speak from that.
Maybe
I've
becoming
been
more
there, done
independent,
that.
living
I have
in the
cried
home.
more hours on the phone trying to get accommodations and programs going for her after 18 than I did when she was a younger kid.
Not to mention, colleges are one of the few places that has a piss poor reputation. I'm not saying all universities and colleges, but most of them has a piss poor reputation for not having appropriate accommodations, but not just for kids on the spectrum, but I mean other kids, whether they're neurotypical, but they have special education.
Absolutely.
It could be overstimulated.
Yeah, they can be overstimulated because when you're out of high school and you're trying to figure out what you want to do, especially with college, and you try to get in your IEP, IEP.
Yes, IEP, it's individualized education plan. It's written there, but the IEP, it's basically we do it every year. The beginning of scholastic year, we do this IEP. We have a meeting with the parents, with the school, with the therapist. Not all the schools are open to work like that, but most of the schools now we are working on it. So all the therapists will come, the parents, the educators, the teacher, etc., and we are going to sit down together and we are going to discuss what is the plan of the year, what we are going to do, what are the goals, what we want to achieve with the kid, etc. So that's for what it stands, the IEP.
Because I'm trying so hard to scream, I need assistance, but it's like they still won't hear me. I'm in a new college. I'm going to be turning down soon, but the other one that I finished my AA in, they made a big reputation for not taking appropriate matters when dealing with people with IEPs or that really does need help, even if they're not on the spectrum.
Congrats on your AA.
Let's hear from the disagree.
All right, just to be clear, I do not disagree with any of you. But I do disagree with the prompt because obviously people on the spectrum need accommodations. I had an IEP growing up. I feel like I often need accommodations all the time. But I really am hopeful that we can get to a point where we won't need accommodations to be included in society. You know what I mean? Like we should, like, for example, Best Buddies, an organization, they say it firsthand, they exist to not exist. They're doing these amazing services for including
so
disabled
in the future
people.
they will,
But ultimately the goal is for that to not happen.
I always try to be respectful of everybody else. Like if we are at a loud restaurant and he's yelling at a loud restaurant, everyone's yelling. You can yell at a loud, but if we're at a library, if we're at a recital or something, I take him outside. So because of that, there's things we can't do. But in the last few years, we've been going to, like on Broadway, they'll have autism-friendly presentations. We saw the Rockettes, we saw the Nutcracker, and it was so great to not only be able to do that with him and let him be able to see that and be a part of it, and to not stand out, but on top of it too, people who are affected by autism differently than my son, to see them given like, fidget toys and these squeeze, I'm like, this is such a beautiful thing. And I think sometimes when we talk about accommodations, a lot of people who are neurotypical see it as, okay, what are you gonna do to my thing now to make it easier for somebody else? And what I'm saying is, you don't necessarily have to change what you're doing, but maybe make something that my son can go to as well.
Yes,
or if
just
he's
adaptation.
not going to interfere with what you're doing,
More
that kind of
adaptable,
thing.
no?
That's how I saw it when I sat down for it.
Just because you were talking about Broadway shows, I know the show How to Dance in Ohio, which is
I
about...
just saw it.
I love
I really
saw
want-
How to Dance in Ohio.
I really
in
want to
New
go see
York.
it.
It was great.
But I think, if I remember correctly, I think they do have like a sensory room.
They do. They have a sensory room. They
And
have
everything.
spinners. They have all kinds of stuff that's accommodated, and the performers are on the spectrum.
Right, and so like with that, I think we can normalize things like that.
I was on American Idol this past season. I did, and I told them straight up, in order for me to be my most optimal self, and in order for me to be my best self, I'll need some of these accommodations. I'll need you. I understand that, schedules are a bit loose when it comes to, entertainment industry related stuff, but if you can just give me some degree of a little push, as to giving me some sort of ETA for this, that, and the other, and they were great. They were great. I had a wonderful experience on American Idol for that reason. I was the only non-minor there who had his mom with him during that time, and I'm proud to admit that. I'm a mama's boy.
Autistic people are not accurately represented in the media.
Let's go, people.
Well,
I have so many thoughts about this.
I think I agree.
Obviously, I'm a white autistic male, and a lot of like the mainstream representation are quote unquote like super intelligent white autistic males, but that's all there really is. And for me, I'm not like Sean on The Good Doctor. I think we've definitely made some good progress with certain things, but I just remember growing up, it was always like superficial stereotype. And I just would love to see autism represented in a way that's more nuanced, with like particularly with women. Like not all autistic women are Temple Grandin, and as brilliant as she is, but that's not, that the problem is they want to take these like pillars and just kind of think that like these are the only options. It's either like the...
Yeah, this is what I was saying before. No, it's like I think right now we can see more about autism, and but we still see this like the genius part of autism, but not every child and every adult is a genius. But I think it's a difficult topic because autism, it's a spectrum. So you will never be able to choose one person that can represent all, adult children under spectrum disorder. So
worst of the worst are the best of the best, and that's not fair, and it's not true.
So true.
I want to see an autistic character where their autism isn't necessarily like their whole story.
I have some friends who think that, and I think this is probably kind of prevalent, if you say they have autism, they have savant syndrome, right? Where they're just a genius and they can magically
There's
do
not like a middle
something
point,
perfectly, like play piano. Or they're a person who has really low functioning autism and they can't do much, they need able people to help them. It's unfortunate that that's kind of the two stories that are being pushed, and there's not a lot of nuance there, and people assume the worst or the best, and they don't look at it the other way.
So my thing is, I wish that the term spectrum keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and what it doesn't do is honor the individual skill sets.
Right.
Like you have an incredible skill set. You just got your AA. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And your son sounds amazing and loving and sweet, and you know what that is because you spend all your time with him. And this charm right here is amazing. But what bothers me the most is that in the media, like TikTok, for example, I guess it's trending to be autistic, and I'm very worried about this. It's trending.
Magic with Thomas.
Well, what I'd like to say is, if you have sensory issues, you're now called autistic. I grew up with a brother who had sensory issues. He is not autistic. Well, now you're clumped in with that. So then what is the representation if there's literally not 3 levels, but 50 levels of functioning? It's confusing.
Right,
like on TikTok, you'll see like someone with 8 million followers on TikTok who's a comedian, who's the funniest person ever, and who's I'm an amazing fan of, is looking for an autism diagnosis at 35 with a college degree and 2 kids, and you go, oh, I wonder what that is for them, because did you have any speech therapy? What is it, and why do you feel you need that diagnosis? But that media attention is what's permeating the rest of people who are not familiar with autism, thinking, oh, I don't like loud noises. I hate the sun. I must too be autistic, and that's a worry for me.
I'm curious, do you think that media representation, could you see it like in a positive light, in the sense that now people are wanting to identify with it because they've seen the positive traits of autism?
There's something positive going on with it being, I use the word trendy, but I will tell you, if I didn't have people that attack me on social media for helping Abby to get her, what do we say? What's our sentence? To get your brain?
To do what I'm telling it to do, of course.
Right, to get her brain to do what she's telling it to do.
Haters.
I know, there's some really mean people, and it's because I'm helping her.
The haters are ugly, and the haters are extremely overweight.
That's quite an insult. Now, why don't you tell them, why is that? You said that because you're thinking in categories.
Because I think in categories, this is the way my mind works, and I wrote a song about it.
Right, so that is part of what we're dealing with, to be in the conversation right here, right now.
In media, there's the gender stereotypes, there's the racial stereotypes, and people are saying, oh, we need to fight the stereotypes. But everyone's okay with the stereotypes about autism happening. And there obviously is a small group of people trying to fight those, but there's not as big of a realm of, oh, we need to fight the racial stereotypes, we need to fight the gender stereotypes, as there is for the rest.
Okay, once again, I totally agree with everybody. But the reason why I stayed back is because I can't lie here. I really do feel like I have been represented quite well. But I think the reason for that is,
but this is also personal. I think. I'm a
blonde boy. I was diagnosed as a child. I was in my own world. I
was in my own world too.
Yeah, I was considered, gifted with my, piano skills and perfect pitch as a child. A lot of people called me a prodigy as a child. So I fit that stereotype. Another reason why I stayed back is because I think we're headed in a better direction. For example, How to Dance in Ohio. There's another series I watched just recently. It was a British series.
Heartbreak High, the character I mentioned earlier.
Yeah. There are some great stuff out there. My personal favorite, Disney Pixar's Loop. I think you would really enjoy it because it features a non-speaking character and it's played by a non-speaking person. Oh, yeah. You should definitely check it out.
Do you think it's offensive when someone who's neurotypical plays a character that is autistic?
Yes. That was one thing I was trying to bring up, especially where Veronica was bringing up about the more inclusive, basically inclusive appropriation. I do feel like it's so offensive with someone that's neurotypical to portray someone that's autistic. Like Sia did that with a little girl who was not on the spectrum, and she had a lot of backlash for that. And I see what they're trying to do, but they don't think about why not someone that can understand it, especially for the fact this is something that's not temporary. This is permanent.
Something that's kind of
permanent,
important is that in the media,
because there is still a little bit of confusion. And let me point this out, that we think that autism is just like something that will come and disappear, or when you have the diagnosis, that's it. No, it's permanent, it stays, it's going to be with you. This is the way how your brain functions. And basically, I think, that's it. That's how it goes.
a lot we see characters with autism, their entire character development is either learning to cope with autism or learning to mask autism. And it's not often something where it's like yourself, where it's like your story is learning music, right? And becoming a teacher. And that's such a more wholesome story than a person who's basically learning to suppress themselves.
Yeah.
I think the reason why I have such a pushback against The Good Doctor and Atypical is because I went to drama school, I've surrounded myself with industry professionals who are not autistic. I know the intent. And in my opinion, they're doing it for money. I'm sorry. It's selfish, it's greedy, and no matter even if they think they're doing the right thing, because they're relying most of the time on stereotypes, they're continuing to push the narrative that we are not just one monolith. And for me, that really bothers me. And in no way am I shape or form trying to
and I totally
downplay.
agree with that too. I think it's better that people on the spectrum.
I just get angry.
That could be
about
said
it.
for anything, though.
Yeah.
That's like, I think like
I feel the same way
sure.
about like LGBTQ films
Exactly.
with straight guys who try to like pander and be all, clearly, they're playing gay characters to win an Oscar. I mean, I think of
Gay for
Saltburn.
pay.
Yeah, gay for pay. Yeah.
I think media as a whole is superficial.
Yeah, exactly.
90% of the time. There's
Yeah.
like some deep movies, deep shows, things like that. But the reason why they only deal with how they deal with their autism or where they got their autism from and not something deeper like your story is because they don't tell those stories. They just tell you the quickest thing they could tell you.
Because
That's
they
why I
tell the
was so
stories
honored
that
to be on
it's
American
convenient.
Idol. I am
Yeah.
very, very happy with how they portrayed me. They even included my meltdown in there as well. It was very raw, and they didn't skew it. I can truly say that, So that's another reason why I say I think we're headed in the right direction, because I'm a firsthand lived example of that.
Last point.
And then you were talking about how, LGBTQ films or actors of different races, and there's not that much happening with actors without autism representing characters with autism. That's just because there's not enough movies being made about that. Like you saw Sia's music.
I also would like to know if there are enough actresses or actors with autism who would like to participate in movies, because this is another thing that I wanted to see, like the fact that we don't have real representation of disability. That's one thing, on people with disability. Doesn't matter autism or not autism. But I would like to know how many people are studying to become an actor or an actress having a disability. I don't know if you can get my point, but here I think it's a mix of both. Maybe there are not enough adolescents or adults who would like to actually the role or the final goal in their lives is actually to be a great actor and participate in films about autism or not just about autism. So I think it's would be interesting to see that point as well, but that's kind of information unfortunately we don't have. So
And there was tons of backlash against that. But there hasn't been that much backlash in recent films because there just aren't enough films being
Which
made.
is ironic because Sia actually came out last year and said that she was diagnosed with autism, which is a whole other ballgame that intrigues me. But anyway, I had to throw it right in
Unfortunately,
there.
there are a lot of people now
move on to-
self-diagnosing themselves, which is also one of the main problems, no?
To the next prompt. All right. It's better for autistic people to date within the community.
She follows her mom. I don't think she's sure that she needs to go or not.
Just pop a squat.
It's too
You hesitated.
Too cute,
I'm
like I
curious
said
if you want to
before.
start.
I hesitated because that's such a superficial thing to look. I mean, like it just and the basis of it. Like I don't want to just be with somebody just because they're autistic, but it's good to find commonality in someone. And I think autism is a huge part of my identity and how I see and how we see the world. And just like, I personally don't look for,
Maybe
I mean, granted,
perhaps
I've
you
never
can
been in a
understand each other
relationship.
better,
And
I
I
don't
think
know.
me being autistic and not trusting guys in particular is something that I struggle with. But I can see how it is better because it's easy just to, because that autistic person might be
Connect.
able to like see you, like at just even sitting here just talking about our experiences, like you can say something and I can see you in that moment and it
Yeah.
feels good. But ultimately, I don't think it's the end all be all.
So, Abby, you want to talk about dating David, who's on the spectrum?
David, my boyfriend, is also on the autism spectrum.
Okay.
And we like to go to like the Century City Mall independently sometimes.
And what's great about David that
He understands the way my mind works. He understands my autism. And we just went to the zoo yesterday.
Oh, that's
for
cute.
her autism, dating someone within the autism community is right. And David understands
Right and safe,
her
perhaps,
autism.
no? We
Just
can
the
say
other
that it's
night, we had a
safe.
big dinner in a restaurant, and there was a crying baby right next to our table. What did David do for you?
He covered my ears, and in some ways, that baby actually really liked me. When he was crying, he was a lot. You know who he reminded me of? Curious George, the little monkey. And his mother reminded me of the man with the yellow hat.
She's great with the analogies, right? but what was great is that when she started to have a meltdown and a
Yeah.
real anxiety attack because
Yeah.
that screaming baby, that auditory sound, they wouldn't change tables. We asked to change our table. The restaurant wouldn't do it. It's just one of those unfortunate scenes. Family was really nice. It was just unfortunate. David leaned over and covered her ears and let her experience that. And I'm not sure a typical person would get that or understand that or have
Well,
patience for that.
I think-
and that happens, by the way, a lot.
I think it can happen. I think a neurotypical also can understand if you know your girlfriend, your partner well enough and you know what he might like or not, or how she can behave. I think certain things can be solved, but I understand the point of I don't remember his name. I don't remember, but I think I understand the point when you are meeting someone who has maybe similar difficulties or sensory experiences, etc. She can really understand you 100%. But I think it depends on the
Do you
relation,
feel
depends on your partner, I
uncomfortable
guess.
having a neurotypical person date, Abby?
Candidly speaking, I guess I kind of would, because the innocence, she needs an aid to help her, always. We're still learning life skills. I don't understand how a typical person might be able to have that level of patience.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not
This is another
possible, but I
thing.
just think in general, and what I've witnessed between David and Abby is like literally makes me cry, tears of joy. It's the most beautiful thing ever.
I've never been in a relationship either, and I 100% would love to date someone else on the spectrum. I definitely think that there would be a lot of beautiful connection there. However, there really is something beautiful about a neurotypical person who just gives a crap. I'm personally no less
Okay.
attracted to autistic people than I am to neurotypical people, but man, I'd be lying if I said I did not only want to date someone on the spectrum.
Okay.
I actually do agree with what y'all was saying earlier. Like, I do see where y'all coming from about having someone on the spectrum date with someone on the spectrum just will lead less, it will bring less problems. But it just depends on the person.
Yeah,
I guess
I
because
think so.
I know me, because I can relate with Ian. I just said I'm pansexual, and unfortunately, some people who I had feelings for, I had to try find many reasons not to have feelings for them, especially at work, because they are
Story of my life.
I don't. Yeah, no, because I hate it because it's just weird and inappropriate for me. But anywho, and I just think people on the spectrum should be able to make a choice if it's safe to do so, because we are living in a garden of evil,
Yeah,
and we
but,
do have
exactly.
we do have
Everybody's
unfortunately people that will
different, no?
manipulate those of us, whether we still have our innocence or not.
What about you? What's your
I-
dating life like? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding.
So I'm 16.
Oh, there you go.
You obviously should be aware that, sometimes people will prey on those who they think they can manipulate, even in neurotypical relationships. But at the same time, I don't think that anyone, kind of regardless of who they are should close themselves off to someone solely based on like a group that they're a part of or a stereotype, right?
That
And
I
so
agree with. That
I think that we should treat everyone as individuals and look at as
Yeah,
such.
for sure.
And so maybe we
I
should
think
be
I agree
kind of
as well. I
open
think it
to
depends on
whatever comes our way.
it depends
Let me
with,
put it
with
this
who
way.
you're meeting.
The autism label should not be the reason why a neurotypical person would not want to date someone on the spectrum. The autism themselves, you know, you see what I mean? It's hard to explain, you know.
Yes, but I think it's because autism is so difficult that not everyone feels the same. Like Abin, I think his name is. Not everyone feels the same, you know. For example, like the mom said, she's still learning some social skills. She's still not fully independent, etc., etc. Like she says, sometimes we go to the mall together. So we're talking about a grown-up woman that sometimes goes with her partner to the shopping mall, or you know, or they go to the zoo, or so it's like it's a great things, different type of steps towards the independency. But we are not talking about a girl of 14 years old or 16 years old or 18 years old. We are talking about a grown-up woman. So definitely which man at her age will have the patience to deal with her sensory issues, with her life skills, you know, or maybe the way how the brain, like she said, that she categorizes things, you know, and the way how she functions, it can be a little bit complicated. So that's why I'm saying I think it depends with who you are, the person with who you are, no, and also how you are managing your autism.
Like the label can't get in the way. If someone is like, oh, by the way, I have autism, and then they just immediately walk away just because of that, you know, then I think that that's a little bit of a problem.
Yeah. I think dating is probably a struggle for many people,
And
whether
yes.
it be neurotypical or
Oh,
autistic.
yeah.
That's why I have
That's
respect
the
for you,
problem,
especially for the fact you're a single mom, you taking your 2 kids, full job. Like, I have total respect for you because my mom is in a similar boat. I completely have full respect for you, so I understand completely.
How did you go about, I guess, setting up that blind date? Is there like a way for maybe autistic people to be able to date easier? Is
Well,
there
it's
such
interesting
systems?
because she was on Love on the Spectrum, and so that was like a random thing that came from Australia to the U.S. And I'll be honest with you, even saying yes to doing that show, she didn't really know what it was. I didn't really know what it was, but then I saw Australia season 1, and it made me nervous because they were driving cars,
interesting.
college grads. They were going to Europe by themselves, and I was like, well, we don't have that, and there's a big expressive language issue. So I think you want, pardon the term, Asperger's in love. Because these folks have a different skill set, and I didn't want her to be in over her head. She didn't care really one way or the other. So obviously it was a great thing we did, but I will say that the team, once they came over, they were really kind about it, and they let her kind of be her and do her thing and show up the
that's
rest.
right. Because I couldn't focus and sit still. I needed
right.
I needed to be moving.
During the interview. Yeah.
You made it through with flying colors.
Thank you.
And flying colors means victoriously, by the way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you're doing it here now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Exactly.
Autism can be a strength.
She's always looking to the mom, so still
How'd you
little
think
bit
about
of
that, huh?
dependency
I
there.
don't know.
I don't want to say it's I know people say it's a superpower. I don't necessarily agree that it's a superpower. One of the reasons why, like I write about autism appreciation with my son, and I haven't really told the story of reason why. When my son was first showing signs of delay and we were getting him diagnosed, that's all I thought about was like, it's the worst thing in the world. Terrible things are going to happen. Terrible things are going to happen.
For sure.
As I was worrying about it being the worst thing in the world, I had a heart attack, and it turns out I needed a quintuple bypass. So I had a quintuple bypass. I was 35. I had no idea. I had no health problems before that or anything. And I remember being in the hospital, and I didn't think about what he couldn't do. I didn't think about my worries. I just wanted to see him. I wanted to get my son back. And since that day, I've tried to focus my entire life on positives, but especially when it comes to him, the positives that come with his autism. And the fact, as I said before, he's true, he's honest, he's genuine, his soul is pure, the things that he does are for a good reason. And a lot of the things that I think sometimes I'm guilty of as somebody who's, neurotypical, selfish tendencies sometimes, or conceit or arrogance, things like that. He doesn't have those things.
No.
And it's almost like the removal of those things are his strength.
I actually agree. Like I see
too
your
cute, yeah.
point because I do think autism is a strength. As you said, being autistic, it's like you have like, I guess in my meaning, double the innocence versus how you would be when you're
For sure.
neurotypical. Because
Yeah.
when I was in high school, imagine all the crap I have to eavesdrop on, and I'm just like, yeah, I think I know how you're going to be growing up. But it's not all of them anyways. But the whole point, though, is some of them do remind you the times where those innocence is almost so valuable. Because, you know, you only want to have them once, and sometimes, depending on what you do, you may get it partly, and some days you may get it, but not the same way like you used to. So, yes.
Personally, I'm a little on the fence about the pure thing. I was called pure a lot.
Okay.
As a
I think pure
teenager.
it's more genuine.
I'm not totally sure how I feel about that, but I totally understand what you're saying in every other way. And for me, it takes the form of autism is my superpower. Autism is my strength. Autism is something I have. It's not something that I am. That's my relationship with it. And I will accommodate your relationships with your autism. Autism is not always a strength, though. Some of the most traumatic moments of my life have been sensory overloads, meltdowns in public.
For sure.
So I think that would be kind of ridiculous to call that a strength.
Of course.
But at the same time, autism is very much a strength in so many other ways.
But I would say, like, for me, I think, obviously, like I said, it's very difficult to give your opinion when you are neurotypical, but, or at least I think so. But I think we are all different independently. Neurotypical, atypical, doesn't matter. And we all have qualities, strength, challenges, you know, difficult momentums in our life, etc. You just have to take it as it is, you know. I don't think autism represents that it's something bad or good. Another, like, I do feel that kids with autism are gifted, you know, and they are different for a reason, you know, and some of them are extremely amazing, you know. So I do think that there is positive things in all of us, no? So I don't think there is such a situation saying autism can be a strength. I'm pretty sure it's a strength. But like everything else, you have your also bad days and you have your negative parts, no? Like the same, like I will suffer sometimes from migraine and I still have to go to work or whatever, migraine, sorry, or I don't know, will have some pain or suddenly I have to go on pills, on medication because of another reason or whatever. In autism also you have your parts, like he's saying, overwhelming, some sensory issues, sometimes it's not the mood or the day to tolerate certain people, certain noises, certain voices, no? So it can be obviously overwhelming and see how you manage with that, no? So
for me, I ditto that. But I will say I am slightly different in the sense of, like, I identify as an autistic person rather than a person with autism because it's not something I need to otherize. For me, I understand why other people would kind of, everyone has their right to their preference. In terms of it being a strength, I see it as a strength because, frankly, I don't know who I would be without it.
Without it, yeah, for sure.
For
because
me,
it's
in terms
been
of how
with
to
you since
incorporate
you
my
were born.
autism to that, I use it as part of my arsenal, not as like a crutch, but like just more as like I can do this because I have this mixture of my autism and my upbringing, and I kind of bring them two together because that's what I know.
You can't simply look at autism as a deficit as opposed to a strength, because that's basically saying part of who that person is a deficit.
Exactly.
And that's not correct.
And that's not
correct.
So
it's better that we try and have this positive outlook on it instead of saying, hey, this person has a problem. It's, hey, this person is different. How can we help them or accept them?
But see,
if they need to be accepted or if they need to be helped.
That's the difference. So that's why the spectrum and the language is confusing. If you have to learn to talk, and you have to learn that the world is happening right here, because some people come in so isolated, just shut down, and I wish that the industry would change the language so that those that have overcome deficit are honored, and those that have just a difference are honored. Do you see why the language and the confusion and new diagnostic things, it's all sort of blurred lines until we get this clear, and it's to me the biggest problem.
Hey Abby, I want to ask you a question. What do you think your strengths are?
My strengths are
Singing. She said that
Swimming.
before.
I can see things before anyone else. I can remember things. I can hear things far away in the distance.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's very, very important that we all acknowledge the fact that everybody, whether we're on the spectrum or not, has strengths and weaknesses, things that make us unique. Just because the weaknesses or deficits, if you will, might seem a bit more outlandish or might be things that an overwhelming majority of society does not struggle with, doesn't mean that unique struggle is any less valid.
Yeah. Yeah,
I just
totally
want
agree.
to say that it's wonderful to get to talk to everyone. And
Yeah.
I'm really glad to be able to hear about all your experiences because I didn't know a lot of like the experiences that you guys have had. I'm really glad I was able to understand those and learn those too.
So to conclude it, I know you were recently on American Idol. We
Yes.
would love to hear you sing.
Oh, well, before I sing, go stream my brand new EP, Regroup. I've worked with some absolutely incredible people, including my drummer, Logan Shepard. Shout out to you, man, who is also on the spectrum and is a touring drummer. Anything is possible. And you are the best that'll never be in my life, in my life.
Okay,
What
nice.
about me?
No, your turn, yes.
I have, Taylor Swift, the singer.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
She's amazing. I have this thing where I get older, but just never wiser. Midnights become my afternoons.
Beautiful voices, of
You guys want
course.
to hug, shake it out?
Okay, so that's it. That's it for today. I loved it. I definitely will check a little bit more. If they have any more content about autism, I think it's super cool. I think it's very nice to hear adults with autism to talk about different topics and their perspective, and at the same time have this like little community, group where neurotypical meets atypical, and they are discussing certain things. So that was fantastic. I loved it. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope to meet you in another React. In the meantime, take care of yourself. And I hope this was productive. At least for me, I loved it. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.